arrangements that were made about sending James Meredith, the University of Mississippi, were arranged with the concurrence and the approval of the governor of the state at that time, and involved him in a number of conversations, and the arrangements were made after discussions and his participation and his approval. Now, without going into all of the details, we worked it out together. Is that enough for you? Well, I haven't been requested to do so by the White House or by anybody else. If I get a call on that matter from anybody down the street from where I work, I'll be glad to consider it. I won't hold my breath. As Goethe once said, the future of a nation, the future of a country is determined by the opinions of their people under the age of 25. And I think the future of this part of the country, the future of the United States really is going to be determined more and more by our young people. People who are trained and people who are educated and the people who feel that they have a stake in the future of their state or the stake in the future of their community and the stake in the future of their country and are willing to do something about it. I think if it's all of these problems are left to others, for others to try to find answers or solutions, then we're going to be in nothing but difficulty here in the United States. But if our young people, and particularly those who are educated, and particularly those who have the advantage of a university or college education, feel that they have a role to play, again, no matter what that role might be, whether they be Republicans or Democrats or liberal or conservative or whatever it might be, or whether other faction of a political party they might be involved in, if they become actively involved and feel strongly about these matters and are willing to give some of their time and give some of their effort and their energy and talent on behalf of their state or on behalf of their fellow citizens or their country, that's what's going to make a difference for this country. It's not that those who are in Washington or those who are in the state capital have the answers to the great problems that are affecting this country or the world. But it's the fact that if all of us participate and contribute a little bit, contribute our knowledge and contribute our talent or contribute our energy, all of us make that kind of a contribution, then the chances of survival for the next generation of Americans or the next generation of mankind is really going to be that much greater. And I saw anything, I think particularly while I was Attorney General of the United States, while I was a member of President Kennedy's cabinet and then involved with President Johnson, it was the fact that one person really could make a difference. And the participation and the active involvement, not just of those who were in the Peace Corps, not just those who were involved in activities around our country, but those who were involved in state governments and federal governments, that one individual feeling strongly about a particular matter and willing to make that kind of a sacrifice could make a difference. And so that all of us really have the responsibility of trying. I look out at all of you and I think of the words of Bismarck about the students of Germany. He said that a third of the students die from overwork and too much study. A third die from dissipation and drink. And a third go on to be the rulers of their country. And I can look at you and realize what third is here today. But but I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted, as I say, to see all of you. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have, either about local matters or about, in brief, that strengthen it. He's entitled, of course, to his own judgment and his own point of view, and I consider him a man of considerable integrity. And he just, he has a different point of view than perhaps than I have, and I expect that the fewer people that advocate the position that I advocate weakens it. And he's one that did advocate it before, as I understood it, and now has changed his opinion. After his visit out there and after talking to many people out there, he's decided that that course of action is not in the interests of the United States. I respect him for that. Well, what I have said in the past is that when I discuss this matter, and I just repeat what I have stated, is that Mr. Kosygin and Foreign Minister of North Vietnam, and Mr. Ho Chi Minh have indicated that a cessation of the bombing would bring about discussions and conferences in connection with the war in Vietnam. That a year ago we were willing to end the bombing in order to accomplish that result. That was our objective when we stopped the bombing for 36 days. At that time, the North Vietnamese held out some preconditions which were unacceptable to the United States. Their 4 points and the withdrawal of all American troops from South Vietnam. They've withdrawn those preconditions. They've withdrawn the 4 preconditions plus the withdrawal of American troops from South Vietnam, and have indicated through their spokesman that they would come to the conference table if the bombing of North Vietnam was ended. I had suggested that in view of that, and view particularly of Mr. Kosygin's statement in London in connection with this, and after all, he's the head of the communist world, in view of his quite clear statement in connection with this, that they would come to the negotiating table, that I thought that in view of that it was worthwhile for the United States to end the bombing of North Vietnam, that we would ask the United Nations or some other international group in to supervise that period of time, to determine whether the North Vietnamese were using that period of time to build up, to cause a build-up in South Vietnam, that we, if it was, and if they were not really interested in conversations or discussions, if they were not interested in trying to negotiate in good faith, then we could reassess the military situation. I have none for a future other than to, I'm going to run for the Senate in 1970, but I haven't got any plans. Other than that, I support the national ticket in 1968. I think there has to be cooperation. I think that that's the ideal, that there should be complete cooperation between the whites and the Negroes. If that does not exist, the program is going to be less effective. But I think that I don't think that the fact that they're in a particular area of the state, a particular county of the state, that there isn't that kind of cooperation should mean that you should end the poverty program. I think that you should proceed with the hope and with and attempting to accomplish the idea, which is a close cooperative effort between the whites and the Negroes. But if that's not forthcoming, I think you have to proceed in the best way possible. We heard some testimony today that indicated that in some areas there has been, instead of support for the poverty program, there's been opposition by some of the public officials in the state of Mississippi, and lack of cooperation amongst others. But we also had some testimony from some leading white citizens who said and pointed out that they had been very active in the poverty program and wanted to see it a success. I would hope in this state, as in other states, that we would be able to develop a cooperative effort which could be successful and effective. People of South Vietnam could determine their own future and their own destiny, and that whether you would hope that that would ideally be accomplished through an election, but in any case that they would not have a alien philosophy thrust upon them, and that they wouldn't be taken, that they would be able to make that judgment and determination as to what kind of and form of government, who their leaders might be. Recent events in communist China, I think it's a struggle between, and it's not an original thought obviously, but struggle between Mao and the regular Communist Party organization. It's a power struggle. And I would think that the fact that the power struggle has gone on, and with which the Army has played some role over the period of the last several weeks, or the last 6 weeks or so, that I would think that the fact that the party, that struggle directed toward what? We became involved in Vietnam over a period of time, and I think that we've reached the judgment and the determination that the way to deal with Cuba and the way to deal with Castro is not to become involved in a major shooting war, that's not in our national interest. I think we made that judgment back in 1962 particularly, and I think it's supported by President Johnson. And I think that the fact is that it has been successful because they've been isolated pretty much from Latin America and what they intended to do in Latin America. And let me say, when I went down to Latin America, I was very, I think I had met with students and I met with all kinds of groups and labor groups. I think only on one occasion was I ever asked about Castro. That couldn't have been possible 4 or 5 years ago. But he's faded really as a significant figure, Castro has in Latin America, and the idea of Cuba being